Hey guys, Jeff at Hubie's Garage, and yeah, we're at Howie's Garage today, and we're going to go ahead and take a break from the Bel Air two-door sedan, and we're going to switch over and work on the Bel Air two-door hardtop, Howie's hardtop. So it's got some repairs that need to be done, and I've got the list. All right, so we're going to jump on the list for the hardtop today. We've got a gas gauge that doesn't work, a speedometer that doesn't work with a bad cable, power steering belt that makes a lot of noise. We're going to recenter the steering wheel. We're going to replace that annoying fan blade, and then we have some carb repairs to do, basically primarily a throttle pump. So let's get on it. The tires are pointed perfectly straight right now, and for some reason when the 3-spoke was installed, it never got put on perfectly straight. So let's go ahead and start with that. So center cap comes off, and I've already loosened the nut, and see if I can do this while holding the camera. Okay, because I did kind of pre-work that one off. So that's where it needs to be. The old classic 3-spoke. Let's see if we can get it to guide itself back on. Okay, that might be a tooth off. It's hard to say. It's a lot better than what it was. So let's see. Might need to just do one more tooth. Let's see what one more tooth to the left looks like. Okay, I think that's probably right where we need to be. Okay, so easy enough fix on that one. Won't be driving down the road like we're continually turning left. That's NASCAR, not this car. So we'll go ahead and tighten this bolt back down and put the cap back on it. And when we go take it for a test drive, we'll make sure that it tracks perfectly straight. We'll see if it needs to come over one click to the right or to the left. All right, so we're going to start under the hood. We've got to go ahead and tighten up the power steering belt, maybe even possibly put a new one on because it's been squealing real bad. We're going to go ahead and replace the fan blade. It sounds like a P-51 Mustang going down the street. It's super loud, super obnoxious. We're going to replace that. We're also going to take the water pump off. It's got some crystals and some rust building up around the joints where it mates to the block. And then we're also going to go ahead and put a new throttle pump in the Edelbrock carb, the AFB style carb. The car's got a real bad flat spot or a stumble off the line, and I'll go ahead and show you the video right here.
That was a jerk.
So hopefully replacing the throttle pump on the Edelbrock carb will take care of that stumble and take care of the problem. So let's get to it. All right, we're going to go ahead and start on the carb, and going to go ahead and take the 8 top plate screws off, and they're Torx bits on these Edelbrocks. Unfortunately, you guys know my thoughts on Torx, but it is what it is. Little T25, and we'll get this top off. All right, so I got the 8 screws off the top of the Edelbrock carb. We're going to go ahead and take the gasket off and move that, and then we'll go ahead and take the air cleaner stud out. And then I have 3, I guess, clevis pins or whatever, the compression pins that I got to take off to unhook the linkage. There's one on the throttle pump, and then I've got one on each side of the carb, so we'll go ahead and disconnect those, and then we'll lay the top over this on the side. Got the top off, and looks pretty good. The bowls have a little bit of gunk in the bottom of them. I'm not sure how well you can see that. This one's a little worse. Got little something down there at the bottom. We'll go ahead and wipe that out, get it cleaned, maybe do a little carb cleaner, whatnot. I know this carburetor's never been apart, and the car unfortunately sits a lot, so it doesn't get driven very much. So that's probably our culprit right there, that plunger. We'll go ahead and put the new one in, as well as a new gasket. May not even need the gasket, but I'm just going to do it anyway. And but yeah, we've got the carb top filleted back, and the metering rods are in a spot where they're not going to get bent. We don't have it laying on top of the battery. Don't ever do that. Don't ask me how I know. And anyway, yeah, we'll go ahead and get this throttle pump swapped out. Yep, a little bit of stuff at the bottom of the bowls, and it's just now starting to smell like varnish, so this is probably a good time to get in there and clean it up and get some fresh fuel in this thing too. Bowls are all nice and clean, got them all cleaned out, and I'm going to end up having to take the floats off to get the new gaskets on. But this is an Edelbrock 1411, and I know that the throttle pump assembly is for a 1411. You can see it on there, and basically the gaskets are pretty much all the same for these Edelbrock carbs, because it states that it's basically a lead gasket and it doesn't have a carb part number. But let's go ahead and get the bowls or the floats off, and I'll put the new gasket in. We'll be ready to put the plunger back in, and then we'll put it all back together. Went ahead and compared the gaskets. Everything looks good. There is I guess just on one of the baffles there, they do have a larger opening where the baffle is by the float. So that's the only difference in this thing. It doesn't appear to make any difference in the carburetor. Everything fits on this nice. It fits on the base, and it also fits on the top plate very nicely. But it's nice having these 5-packs. These 5-packs are great. Summit sold these, and they weren't that expensive. All right, got the carb all put back together. Got all the top screws, the 8 screws snugged. And the only issue, I mean, these are real simple carburetors. The only issue I ran into is obviously the top didn't want to go back down real clean because the metering rods weren't going into the jets precisely as they needed to. So what I did was I went ahead and loosened up the plungers, which are connected to the metering rods, and went ahead and popped the plungers out of the hole, set the base or the top plate onto the base, and then got the plungers aligned, got everything pushed back down, and tightened everything back up. Just don't want to bend the needle and seat assembly, and if those metering rods aren't in the hole correctly, then you definitely don't want to do any damage to the car. But that was the only issue, and everything's done. We'll just have to run the car to see if it fixed the problem. We also have a problem with the power steering belt. I don't know if we're going to replace it or just try to tighten it, but that one obviously squeals real bad, and so we'll go ahead and tend to that too. But yeah, pull the water pump off, repaint it, new fan blade, tighten the power steering, and let's get at that. Well, went ahead and disconnected the alternator bracket, the tensioning bracket. It's a real nice bracket, holds tension on it real well, and obviously it has the Heim joint fittings, which is nice. Went ahead and loosened up the bolts. It's kind of hard to see. I don't know if you could see down in there, but went ahead and loosened the bolts on the front of the fan, and we're going to go ahead and pull this fan off. This is a stainless steel fan. It's rated at 10,000 RPMs, but boy, I tell you, this thing is screaming at 5,000, and it is annoying as all get up. You cannot hear the engine at all. And we're going to have to drain the radiator to get the water pump off and get the lower hose off and get everything cleaned up and get this thing painted. The unfortunate part is the petcock is down there at a certain angle. It doesn't have a nipple sticking out of the end of it, so I'm going to have to rig something up so that when we open this thing up, it won't be putting coolant all over the front splash apron here with this nice torch red paint that we have on the car. Well, this was one way around trying to deal with that petcock. So went ahead and shoved my siphon hose down in there, and yeah, good thing we got the water out because it ain't looking too clean. So we'll go ahead and address that while we're under the hood. Well, it's pretty crusty. in here on the water pump. I know when we got all the water out of the coolant system, it was all water. There was no antifreeze or anything like that in there, but we're going to go ahead and get this thing loosened up here so we can get this hose off. And I'm going to go ahead and see if I could try to shorten this hose on this end just a smidge, because the hose is touching the fuel pump, and with vibration and whatnot. I know we've got side motor mounts in the car, but still a little bit of vibration and whatnot, it eventually will wear a hole through that lower radiator hose. One of the other issues when tearing down the water pump or taking the water pump off on these ZZ4s, these later model 350 horse ZZ4s with, you can see they've got aluminum heads. They do have a plastic timing cover. Not real thrilled about that, but I guess it's just what they come with. And good time to inspect it when you got the water pump off. But yeah, these ZZ4s, they're fun little motors. Yeah, it's been a good motor for this car. Okay, got the fan off, got the stainless steel fan blade off. Not sure where this one's made, but it's pretty heavy. And yeah, it's junk. This thing's going in the trash. I don't need it. It's really annoying. The spacer, we're going to go ahead and use the spacer. That's provided that the new flex fan diameter of the hole is the same. Hopefully it will be. I'm sure it should be. I think it's standard size. But let's go ahead and just make double sure. And yep, that is exactly the same diameter. I believe this is a 15. So this one is, oh, I'm sorry, this one's a 17. So this is a 17-inch fan blade. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be a perfect fit. Won't have any problems with the fan shroud, and it should get a good draw of air with the combination of the fan shroud. And let's see, go ahead and put that on. And yep, that fits perfect. Direct fit, clearance fit. All right, I got the water pump all stripped down with the wire wheel, painted, and you know, there was so much crap, so much buildup around the back of the impeller plate that I just went ahead and went down to Napa and grabbed a water pump gasket. I actually grabbed two of them. They're only $3.20, so it certainly pays to have a spare. So I went ahead and bought one and one in spare, and so I went ahead and put the gasket on the back of the plate after painting everything, and we are ready to go, and it's ready to put back on the car. I typically, on these water pumps, they have one that has the extra hole, and kind of hard to see here, but you've got the two holes on one end, and then you've got the other one that's got the drain, I guess, on the other side. And the gaskets come this way. On that second one that doesn't require that, I just go ahead and clip the end. I try to use stainless bolts because these bolts do go into the water jackets. And unfortunately, my fastener place, it's a weekend and they are closed. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the original water pump bolts back in. They actually were in really nice shape and did really well. But we are going to go ahead and use some anti-seize lubricant. You guys probably know this stuff. It's the famous silver stuff that you end up putting on coating the threads with, and you got to be real careful with this stuff because it can go sideways real quick. Well, I went ahead and lined up the bolts and the spacer and the new fan, and there's really no difference between the spacing on the old fan versus this. It's all the same parts, but yeah, I'm not real happy with the amount of threads that's reaching through to grab that water pump. So that was something that probably was overlooked or probably wasn't carefully scrutinized when putting this together. So we're going to go ahead and get some longer bolts that'll go through the face of the water pump. Okay, I went ahead and put the water pump back on, and I did break down and run to Ace Hardware, picked up some stainless steel bolts. And so now I've got 4 stainless steel bolts, the correct length, and they're torqued down to 25 foot-pounds. And I've got the anti-seize lubricant on it, so that'll help out where the ends of the bolts are actually in the water jackets. Should give them a little bit of protection, and it helps with torquing down the bolts. So let's go ahead and put the fan blade back on the pulley, and we'll put the belts on and we'll get it done. All right, got the fan blade back on, and went ahead and spun it. It doesn't have any interference with the fan shroud. Got the belts on, and everything's looking real good. We did go one size smaller diameter on the power steering. If you guys have heard this car before, the power steering belt has been the culprit of a lot of noises when you rev the car up and whatnot. So there's been a lot of slippage with it, but I just have to tighten the belts, and everything's ready to go. I went ahead and used some stainless steel bolts. You saw the previous bolts that were in it were a little bit short, so I got some longer ones, and now they reach through the back of the face of the water pump mount without hitting the housing. So just perfect length. So you can see they're not even coming through the back of it. So, but still have enough threads to grab it. So all right, everything under the hood is done, so let's move on to the gas gauge. So the gas gauge has not worked on this since the restoration, so it always goes to like about 1/8 of a tank or 1/16 of a tank. So we're going to go ahead, I think it might be the sending unit. So I know the tank's pretty full, so we're siphoning the gas out. It should be a 16-gallon tank, so I've got 3 5-gallon cans, and we'll go ahead and get the gas out, and then we'll go ahead and go through our series of tests to test the gauge and to test the sending unit and figure out what we need to do to get the gauge working again. Okay, got the fuel drained out and got the car up in the air. Looks like, I'm pretty sure this is the original fuel tank. I think my dad had it sandblasted and then clear coated it, and I went ahead and disconnected the harness, the fuel gauge harness. Let me roll under here. Not sure how well you could see under here, but it does look like, yeah, I don't have a light. It does look like there was a problem with the gauge in the past where he was trying to get it to work. Looks like he hooked a ground wire to the sending unit to try to make sure it was properly grounded. So we may just start from scratch with this one with a new sender and just use the right parts. I'm not sure where he got the sender from, but we've got, you can see here, we've got basically a lead wire that I've got bolted to the gas gauge wire, and then we're going to go ahead and turn the ignition on and then ground that out to test the gauge. So let's give that a shot right now and see what we got. All right, these GoPros are kind of tricky to get in here. I got a flashlight on it now, but that's basically what my dad did. I guess he, like I say, he went ahead and grounded the sending unit out. So obviously he was having issues with this sending unit. Can't really tell if this is a good quality sending unit or not. I would have assumed that he would have bought this one from Dan Chuck, and that's the better unit, but we're going to go ahead and troubleshoot everything, and if we have to, we'll go ahead and replace the fuel sending unit and just start over. I've got the ground wire, and I typically just hook it right to the door latch as a good ground. I've got the key turned on, and you can see the glare. With the key turned on, it goes all the way to full when the harness is disconnected from the fuel sending unit. Now when we go ahead and touch the ground wire here to the door latch, which is a good ground, it should go back to E, and that'll tell us if the gas gauge is good. Okay, looks like the gas gauge is working fine. In fact, it's a little better calibrated than my Bel Air two-door sedan. So, okay, looks like the gas gauge is good. So it looks like our issue is with the sending unit itself. Wiring and the gauge is all good. Well, one of the fun parts about working out of Howie's garage is not having tools, and luckily Howie does have the clutch head screwdrivers, so I'm sure that's the size for the sending unit. So let's give that a shot, see what happens. All right, well, I got it up in the air and started pulling the clutch head screws out of the sending unit, got to the bottom bolt, and sure enough, we had a geyser coming out of it. So there's obviously more fuel in the fuel tank, and obviously with the car up in the air tilted, it's going to be leaning everything forward. So we're going to go ahead and get a little bit, or get more of the fuel out of it, at least get it to the bottom half, and then we'll go from there. All right, got the sending unit out, and noticed something interesting. It's got a rubber gasket, a big, thick rubber gasket. So that may be part of the problem. It just wasn't grounding properly, and it looks like it's fairly well built. It's got some solder around the joint. It's soldered up fairly nicely. It's got a different sock. It's not the same sock that Danchuk uses, so this may not be a Danchuk. And I'm trying to think. Well, there's another problem right there. We got gas coming out of the float. So looks like the float sink. So that's another problem. So glad we got this out. We're going to go ahead and put in the brand new Danchuk sending unit. And we'll get this wrapped up here shortly. All right, so here is the new sending unit from Danchuk. You can see the sock is actually a metal sock, and then this one's plastic. And you can see the float here is actually still draining because it was, the float had sunk. So it's got a hole in the float. But we're gonna go ahead and use the Danchuk clutch head screws that we got with the copper washers, and then we're also gonna use a new cork gasket and replace this old broken fuel sending unit. All right, so I got the inverted flare, the nipple, the 3/8 nipple, put back on to the new fuel sending unit, and I went ahead for the top screw. I just go ahead and thread that in all the way, and we'll go ahead and run that through first on the tank, and then the other ones I basically just started them so that you don't drop the screws, and they're basically right where they need to be. So we'll go ahead and get this thing in. The cork gasket, we don't put anything on the cork gasket, no gasket cinch or silicone or anything like that. Everything goes on dry, and then we'll hook up the lead back to the fuel gauge and should have a working fuel gauge system. All right, I got the new sending unit in. Basically just went ahead and snugged down the clutch head screws and got the lead from the gas gauge hooked up. I also got rid of the little ground wire that was on. There's no need to have that anymore. It was tied here to the one gas tank strap, or the gas tank strap mount. So let's give this thing a try. It should work fine. Let's see what it says now. Went ahead and put 5 gallons in the tank, and we'll go ahead and turn the key on and see what it looks like. Let's see if we can do this without. Okay, there we go. So 5 gallons, it's roughly, and it had a little bit left in it, so it's showing half a tank right now. So that's about right. I'd say 7-8 gallons on a 16-gallon tank. We're at a half a tank. That's pretty awesome. So another box checked off the list. Now we'll get to the speedometer cable, and we should have everything wrapped up. Okay, so I got the speedometer cable out, and I don't know if you could see it. Okay, I'm not sure if you could see it in there, but the speedometer cable is basically wadded up and broken off, and you can see down inside, you can see the square hex is gone. So hopefully this wasn't caused by a bad bearing in the speedometer. We'll see. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and replace this. We got a new cable. We'll go ahead and pull everything out, and we'll go ahead and replace everything in there. All right, so I got the transmission cable out and got that replaced. We did find the remnants of the end of the cable at the transmission where it had completely twisted up and piled up, and that's where it broke. I know there was a pretty good twist in the cable behind the speedometer, but I'm hoping that it's not a bad bearing in the speedometer and it's not allowing the cable to twist, but that could be a possibility. So we'll test that out and see what happens there. All right, went ahead and did a little test fire, and everything's good. So go ahead and do a test fire, and we're gonna do probably go driving around the block. Good oil pressure. Thermostat opened up. I did check that, so that's looking good. We're flowing water, no leaks, and no fan belt squeak or power steering squeak. The fan blade itself no longer has the obnoxious sound, so you can hear the belt. Definitely got the belt fixed. So yeah, no more squeaky belt. So, alright, go ahead and close the hood. We'll take it for a drive around the block. Everything's looking real good. Got a little bit of excess water from filling up the radiator. We did a 50-50. Alright. Okay, gas gauge works. Okay, I see a problem already, and I hear a problem. So, looks like we got a problem with the speedometer bearing. So, probably have to disconnect that and then take the speedometer out, take it to a speedo shop, or maybe see if I can replace the bearing myself. So, we'll see. Yeah, it's definitely making a lot of noise that we don't want it to make. Okay, tracking down the street, the steering wheel is very well centered, so looking good. Alright, let's take her back home to the barn. I'll disconnect this speedometer cable. Like in a speedo cable, so we'll disconnect that right when we get home. Not sure why that didn't get rebuilt before it got put back on the car, but sounds like we'll have to. Jumpy. Thing wants to go. Alright, we'll lower the idle and we'll disconnect the speedometer cable until we can fix that later. Let's see if I can do this without grinding it. There we go. Well, the fan blade's a win, power steering is a win, the water pump's a win, gas gauge is a win. We'll call it a draw on the speedo, because we got the speedo cable fixed, but the problem's in the speedometer. So let's see. centering the steering wheel. Oop, and timing. All right, guys. Well, overall, that's a lot of stuff fixed, and I'm pretty happy with it. So we'll, yep, everything dried up and looking good. All right, got the idle set back where it needs to be, and we'll put the new carb stud on it for the air cleaner, and got the we went ahead and disconnected the speedometer cable, and we'll take care of that at a later time. But yeah, guys, thanks for tagging along on this one. Got Howie's hardtop back on the road, so thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more. Have a good one.